Well, a new group has popped up for the Senate election in South Australia at the upcoming federal election. It isn't a registered party, but SA Matters is running as an unendorsed group in the upper house. Its candidates are Dianah Walter and Dr Rod Pearce, who are joining us now as an exclusive in their first interview since making this announcement. Thank you both very much for being here.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
So, Dianah, I'll start with you. You were the Legalise Cannabis Party's Senate candidate. We had you in the debate. You're still in the debate for the viewers who are wondering. But why have you quit the party and quit as a candidate?
Yeah, thank you. And it's really good to have an opportunity to explain that. So for many, many years, I've been a respected and respectful advocate in regional South Australia. Probably the last decade or more in advocating for better patient access to medicinal cannabis. And my views around adult use cannabis have been widely known as well. And for me, Leo, it's really not a matter of when it might be legalised, but it'll happen, is what I'm trying to say. So I was approached some time ago by the party, and it wasn't a decision that I took lightly because I've been fiercely independent for more than 40 years, and I held tight to those independent roots. But then I thought, well, this movement aligned with my values in terms of, having compassion and wanting to bring about change in that space. So after many months of consideration, I joined the party and I agreed to be the lead Senate candidate. So on the back of that, I was also given an opportunity to continue to lobby for other issues that are important to me. And it was a great opportunity to raise the profile of adult use and cannabis because of the benefits we could get in our regional communities and also more broadly in the state, from tourism to economic benefits. So for me, it was a bit of I guess at the end, it was a reasonable progression to do that. But fast forward a few weeks, and this is by no way a criticism, but I realised pretty quickly that I'm an independent person, and I really value having connections with South Australia. I've been a proponent of a whole range of different things that are uniquely South Australian, and there was a matter that came up that essentially caused me to double think about my loyalty to the state, and I didn't want that called into question. So I quite simply thought about what the future would look like for me being aligned to a party, and it wasn't a decision that I took lightly, but I decided to withdraw my candidacy based on my loyalty to the state. And I also, with that, of course, withdrew my membership to the party. So for me, it certainly wasn't personal. I will still advocate for that cause. But for me, it was a logical step, and to do a quick 180 back to my independent roots. And although we can't be technically called independent because we're an unendorsed group, it's pretty simple, and you will soon work out that we're here for South Australians.
Yeah, we'll get into some of the policies in a moment. Dr. Pearce, how have you kind of found yourself along supporting Dianah in this? Obviously, for these groups, you do need two candidates. Why have you kind of stepped up as that support candidate?
Dianah and I worked previously on a population health program. We were looking particularly at breast screening and the lack of what we thought was a successful program that wasn't reaching the 90%. It wasn't talking about breast density. It wasn't talking about a whole lot of other women's issues. So we worked together on this particular population health issue. We both come from country South Australia. I've been part of South Australia for a long time. In the 90s, I was involved in national population health programs. Yeah, and in the turn of the century, after being president of the AMA, I was the AMA's general practice representative nationally. So nationally, with Nicola Roxon, I was part of Australia's primary healthcare strategy. I've been involved in a whole lot of programs nationally, but 10 years ago, I came back to South Australia to say, make it all happen for South Australia in my own practice, in the city and the country. It's about actually doing it at the grassroots level rather than just being in Canberra waving a flag. So this is a natural fit. It's about advocacy for South Australia, make sure that actually happens on the ground, that I'm in touch with the local communities, the local practices, the local businesses. And we think between us, we can actually be a way that local people in South Australia, anywhere, can actually be heard through a Senate ticket.
Dianah, it's interesting, in terms of South Australia being represented in the Senate, there's been, as you'd be well aware, a few kind of efforts that have been made over the years that have been more maybe SA-centric. I think Nick Xenophon's a name that kind of comes to mind for a lot of people. Rex Patrick as well has kind of shaped up as a significant figure in the SA Senate. I know he's also running in this election, mind you. But how are you going to really be specific and local to the state? And it's not population-wise as big as myself in Victoria or New South Wales, but there's a lot of people in South Australia and a lot of space in South Australia that you need to be representing.
Yeah, there is, and yeah, you're right, and kudos and a huge amount of respect to both Nick and Rex for their efforts that they've made and the path that they've forged for others to come along in time and take up what I consider to be a really strong voice for South Australians. So you talk about South Australia being a state which has obviously a less dense population to that of the eastern states, but the projections that Plan SA have for the future of South Australia in the next 40 years, we're looking at an 18% increase in the population of our state. That will take it to about 2.2 million people, and that still falls short of some of our capital cities. But what that means from a South Australian perspective, that Rod and I will be well placed by dealing with industry and listening to industry and peak bodies to understand what a population increase like that would look like, not just in terms of social issues and social infrastructure, but also infrastructure, things like water and sewage and power. So we think that we're very well placed, given our networks, to ensure that we can be a voice for all South Australians. And like our logo suggests, South Australia does matter. And that device that you see, that location device, I'd like to think that even with technology, we can be across this vast state of ours, from the coast to the regions and everywhere in between, to be that voice for South Australians and add to the already great work that's been done by other senators that have come before us. But we won't be beholden to a party, and I think that's really clear.
And Dianah, just following on, and Dr. Pearce, you might add to this at the end as well. It goes without saying that even though you're representing South Australia in the Senate, there's going to be a lot of issues that a senator would have to touch on, international included, without getting into anything specific. And I'm conscious that there is a debate where we can ask a lot more questions. Do you feel like you're equipped to, and you as the kind of SA Matters group are equipped to deal with all the bigger international and national issues that will also pop up if you're a senator?
I guess the twist or the lens that we would hope to bring on it is to say, if it is an international issue, how does that actually affect South Australia? So if you talk about people coming to South Australia, we want them to think South Australia is a good place to come. If someone of the 3,000 places we've got allocated for skilled workers, we want people to say, this is a skill that I want to bring to South Australia, rather than saying it's the third choice or bad luck, I've just got South Australia. So we can cast a lens on any issue. The advantage of being independent is something is actually presented in the Senate. We can actually look at it and say, okay, if you're going to spend $8.5 billion in the next 4 years on health, make sure it's actually useful to South Australians. Make sure it's going to provide equitable access and quality access anywhere in South Australia, not just Sydney or Melbourne. So it's about actually scrutiny on, say, the women's health program, 573 million advertised by the Labor Party. Make sure it's for all women, particularly appropriate for South Australia. Make sure the urgent care clinics aren't just in a particular party's electorate to pay back someone who voted for them. All of that stuff that we can actually scrutinise. And we don't have to put up the proposal. We can actually scrutinise it and make sure it's actually appropriate for South Australia and good for South Australia.
Yeah.
All right, just finally, Dianah, I think, it's a bit of an advantage to newly announced campaigns like yourself that the Prime Minister's delayed the election announcement, and it won't be till May. So we're not, only a month away as I think we thought we were a few weeks ago. How are you going to be kind of spending that time? Are you going to try to travel the state? Are you focusing on social media messaging? What's really the plan here?
Yeah, that's a good question, and we are so fortunate. We are incredibly fortunate. We have a a really strong supportive team around us. We have professionals, we have people that, and interestingly, when we have our formal launch just after we speak to you, it's become apparent they're not actually coming here to see Rod and I. And some of these people don't know us, but they're here because they want to be, they feel strongly about representation in the Parliament, and they're people that have issues that are important to them and matter to them. So by default, they're going to matter to us. So given that our state is so vast, we will absolutely take advantage of opportunities like this and using digital connection to people. We're not averse to driving a country mile. We do that quite regularly, and we've got a great support team that will take us to where we need to be. And already next week we're heading out and visiting some local communities on the Yorke Peninsula. So social media, and I have to say that because this has been pulled together so quickly, we're still developing a website that should go live by the end of this week. So using all the tools at our disposal, but importantly, the grassroots movement and the absolutely amazing humans that we have just wrapping themselves around us. We couldn't be more delighted.
And remember my experience with the AMA and RACGP, there's doctors all around the state, and those networks I work with and talk to regularly, and they want to make sure that the health dollars are actually spent properly. So the AMA has got proposals of what would be good for South Australia. So all of that is a challenge and a network we already have, linking in with businesses that we've already spoken to. So those networks will help us work out what is good for South Australia and what will matter for South Australia. And that's why the total SA matters.
All right, there will be a debate for South Australian minor party Senate candidates Wednesday, March 19. That's at 7 p.m. local time, at 7:30 Australian Eastern Daylight Time. Dianah Walter, you will be there as an SA Matters candidate, along with Family First, One Nation, and the Jackie Lambie Network. Thank you both very much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you.